Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves beneath the endless expanse of a dark Pacific sky. The air gently salted with the whisper of ocean breeze. Imagine reclining on a woven mat aboard a sturdy canoe, the quiet lapping of waves rhythmic and soothing against the wooden hull. Above you, stars shimmer like tiny lanterns, each one a silent guide in the vast nothingness. But, fair warning, if you are actually out here trying to navigate, let's just say your modern sense of direction wouldn't quite cut it. You probably won't survive this without some serious Polynesian wisdom. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie back and gaze upward, much as ancient Polynesian navigators once did. These early voyagers faced an immense ocean that sprawled endlessly in every direction, a vast blue realm seemingly impossible to conquer, yet conquer it they did, quietly and patiently, without maps or compasses, guided only by their deep understanding of the stars. Each star told a story, a whisper of direction across the infinite waters. Polynesian navigators knew hundreds of stars by heart, their precise positions, rising and setting points, and even how their subtle shifts through the seasons could quietly point the way toward undiscovered islands. This celestial knowledge wasn't merely practical, it was deeply spiritual. They believed these stars held the spirits of ancestors, watching over them from the heavens, guiding their journeys with gentle, unseen hands. Historians still argue whether these navigators relied more on celestial cues or the subtlety of ocean swells. Another quiet mystery will unravel soon. But one fact remains clear: these starlit nights aboard their simple canoes were filled with both awe and routine. Imagine drifting quietly across the Pacific, nothing but the gentle slap of waves, the soft creaking of timber, and occasional whispered jokes about seasick ancestors offering questionable advice from above. One particularly revered celestial guide was Hokulea, known today as Arcturus, a brilliant beacon that seemed always to reassure the voyagers they remained on their chosen path. Sailors developed a detailed mental map of the sky, tracking the subtle dance of these heavenly bodies as faithfully as any modern astronomer. Each generation passed down stories and mnemonics, gently humorous rhymes and serene chants that encoded precise navigational knowledge into memorable verse. As you watch the slow arc of a shooting star tracing a brief, glowing path above, you're reminded of the quirky belief these navigators held about meteors. They considered them messages or omens from the gods. A sudden flash across the sky might spark quiet laughter or solemn whispers, depending on its direction and brightness. These celestial phenomena weren't just background entertainment, they were integral parts of their gentle and observant lives. But the stars alone wouldn't have sufficed. Navigators carefully matched celestial markers to observable points on the horizon, turning the wide Pacific into a comprehensible tapestry of routes. Through patient observation and whispered corrections from master to apprentice, they turned the vast unknown into a network of familiar paths, softly memorized and calmly traveled. You adjust your head slightly, hearing the gentle splash of dolphins alongside the canoe, another subtle reassurance that your imagined journey mirrors theirs in every peaceful detail. The dolphins, much like the stars, weren't merely beautiful companions. Polynesian lore holds numerous gentle stories of these intelligent creatures guiding sailors through perilous regions, subtly nudging them toward safety with playful leaps and squeaks. As your eyes begin to grow heavy, the enormity of what these ancient voyagers quietly achieved is genuinely humbling. Without fanfare or drama, Polynesian navigators patiently unraveled the vastness of the Pacific, one quiet, starry night at a time. And here you are, lulled to near sleep by the same gentle whispers of waves and starlight that once guided them home. You wake to the soft sound of palm fronds rustling gently in the dawn breeze. Today, your imagined journey places you alongside skilled craftsmen meticulously shaping ocean-worthy vessels, each canoe crafted with a quiet reverence for tradition and the sea. As your eyes adjust to the rising sun, you realize this process isn't hurried or noisy. It's an art form that unfolds slowly and purposefully, blending skill with patience in a ritual handed down from generation to generation. At first glance, the materials seem humble: coconut fibers, sturdy tree trunks, and intricately woven sails of pandanus leaves. Yet beneath the surface, simplicity lies profound complexity. You watch carefully as craftsmen select a suitable log, typically from the sturdy koa or breadfruit tree, judging its size, straightness, and the subtle grain patterns, all vital for stability and durability. A gentle joke floats through the air as one craftsman teases another about selecting a tree too stubborn to ever yield to carving, a lighthearted reminder of the camaraderie essential in these communal tasks. They patiently strip bark and carve wood with smooth, rhythmic strokes, transforming raw timber into gracefully curved holes. It's almost hypnotic, the repetitive motion of their hands, an exercise in quiet precision. Historians still argue whether these Polynesian boat builders had formalized techniques or relied heavily on intuition, experience, and whispered advice from older craftsmen. Either way, their quiet competence shines through clearly in the delicate precision of their tools, crafted from stone, shell, and bone, and the careful way they handle each piece. As craftsmen hollow out the hull, you notice the attention given to its depth and width. Each dimension must be just right, not only for structural integrity, but also for the vessel's harmony with ocean currents. These navigators knew that even the subtlest miscalculation could mean disaster in open seas. One craftsman gently taps the hull, his ear close, listening intently to the timber's resonant hum, an ancient, somewhat quirky method believed to ensure the canoe's structural integrity. Meanwhile, women and elders weave sails from pandanus leaves, their hands deftly twisting fibers into sturdy mats. The rhythmic weaving, accompanied by soft murmurs of traditional songs, underscores the serene and contemplative nature of their work. Occasionally, laughter punctuates the peaceful atmosphere, perhaps at an inside joke about the wind's stubbornness or the ocean's endless mysteries. You marvel quietly at how no nails or metal tools are involved. Instead, coconut fibers, braided meticulously into robust cords, bind each component tightly. These cords swell gently when wet, ensuring the canoe remains watertight during long voyages. It's a subtle yet ingenious solution, a fringe tidbit that highlights their profound understanding of natural materials. The completed canoe is then gracefully launched into the water for testing, a moment of quiet pride mixed with calm anticipation. Young apprentices watch closely, absorbing every detail, knowing they'll someday carry forward this subtle yet crucial knowledge. Navigators carefully inspect the canoe's behavior in gentle swells, confirming stability, balance, and responsiveness. The entire process is calm, methodical, and soothingly predictable. Before long, you notice one craftsman quietly etching intricate designs onto the hull, subtle carvings that serve both spiritual and practical purposes. These gentle patterns aren't merely decorative, they invoke protection and guidance from ancestors and spirits. Such practices remind you that for Polynesians, the practical and spiritual seamlessly intertwine, gently steering them through life's journeys as surely as the wind steers their sails. As you slowly step back, the finished vessel gently bobs in the shallows, a testament to patience, ingenuity, and respect for the ocean's formidable yet nurturing presence. You feel quietly reassured by this scene, sensing that the craftsmanship embodied here, quiet, precise, and respectful, offers its own kind of navigation, guiding human endeavors as surely as stars guide voyages. And as the craftsmen gather their tools, sharing quiet nods of satisfaction, your thoughts drift gently forward, pondering how such carefully constructed vessels will fare in the vast, quiet embrace of the Pacific Ocean. You now find yourself gently drifting on the ocean, the canoe beneath you, responding subtly to the rhythm of the Pacific swells. These aren't waves crashing dramatically, rather they're quiet, rolling undulations that carry secrets whispered across thousands of miles of open water. Polynesian navigators once relied heavily on these subtle signals, reading the ocean with an intimate familiarity that bordered on intuition. At first, these swells seem random, just the gentle rise and fall of water endlessly repeating itself. But to a skilled Polynesian navigator, every swell has meaning. Imagine you're seated near the stern, eyes closed, allowing your body to softly tune into this maritime language. You begin to feel subtle variations. The swell from the east pushes gently but insistently, while the northern swell feels slightly more irregular, like the ocean's version of whispered gossip you can't quite catch. Historically, Polynesians recognized multiple swell patterns intersecting across the ocean's surface. They knew each swell was generated by distant weather events or the slow, persistent trade winds far beyond the horizon. Navigators could thus deduce distant storms, calm regions, or even hidden land masses by these delicate oceanic murmurs alone. Historians still argue whether Polynesian navigators primarily used visual star charts or these nuanced oceanic sensations for their voyages. The truth probably lies somewhere gently in between. These voyagers develop extraordinary sensitivity to the natural world, blending celestial navigation with a keen, tactile sense for ocean movement. A navigator might quietly remark to a companion, half seriously, that the ocean itself had moods and personalities, sometimes friendly, sometimes cryptically reserved. One quirky yet useful fact about these swells is how navigators gauge their canoe's direction in pitch darkness or heavy cloud cover. By stretching their bodies flat against the hull, they could feel subtle differences in the boat's roll, pitch, and yaw, discerning the orientation of the vessel simply from these tactile cues. It's an impressively gentle method, requiring immense patience and quiet concentration, qualities deeply ingrained in Polynesian culture. Imagine gently placing your hand into the water, feeling the cool, slightly resistant pull as you trail your fingers. Polynesian navigators did this often, testing the current's direction and strength. They could detect subtle shifts that indicated proximity to islands, as land masses tend to disrupt and alter prevailing ocean currents. Even something as seemingly minor as a faint change in water temperature could whisper a clue nudging the navigator toward a previously unknown shore. You notice the peaceful sounds around you, occasional splashes of distant marine life, the rhythmic creak of the canoe's wooden frame, and soft conversations punctuated by gentle laughter from your imagined companions. They're sharing quiet jokes about the ocean's subtle tricks, reminding one another about the time a particular swell pattern mischievously led an older navigator in circles, only to reveal a hidden island, turning confusion into quiet triumph. These navigators' expertise extended beyond mere practical skill. It was a deeply philosophical understanding. The ocean was revered, respected, but never feared irrationally. Polynesians believed that panic or impatience could cloud one's senses, making the navigator lose touch with the ocean's quiet signals. Thus, calmness, observation, and humility became as crucial to their voyages as any physical tool or technique. You find yourself becoming increasingly attuned to this tranquility, gently swaying in sync with the canoe. The ocean seems to lull you into a state of relaxed alertness, the ideal frame of mind for quietly interpreting subtle natural signs. It's as if the ocean itself rewards those who approach it respectfully, whispering guidance through its gentle movements. As the sun slowly dips toward the horizon, casting a soothing golden glow across the water, you quietly realize that you've just experienced a fragment of how Polynesian navigators once quietly yet confidently crossed the immense Pacific. They didn't shout their mastery or document it boastfully. Instead, they listened carefully, humbly, and respectfully to the whispered wisdom of the waves, knowing that within those subtle patterns lay the keys to discovering new lands and reconnecting distant communities. And now, gently swayed by these eternal ocean swells, your thoughts softly drift toward the other subtle navigational clues awaiting your discovery beneath the vast Pacific sky. You awaken to the first golden rays glinting off the ocean surface, the horizon stretching quietly in all directions. As your eyes adjust, a shadow moves above, wings outstretched, steady and purposeful. It's a seabird, gliding silently just above the waterline. And to the ancient Polynesian navigator beside you, this bird isn't just beautiful, it's a sign, a messenger of land, life, and subtle navigation. Polynesians didn't just watch birds casually, they studied them, carefully, devotedly. These winged companions offered gentle cues, flight paths, feeding behaviors, and nesting rhythms that helped sailors locate islands long before they were visible on the horizon. One moment you see a frigate bird circling wide arcs above the open ocean. The next, a tern appears, flitting quickly toward the west. Your navigator friend smiles quietly, interpreting this avian ballet with calm certainty. Birds like noddies, terns, and boobies rarely ventured more than a few dozen miles from land. So, if you spotted one flying determinedly in a straight line at sunset, chances were good that it was heading home for the night, and land would be in that very direction. This was one of the gentlest secrets of the Pacific. Follow the birds, and you may just find a home. Historians still argue whether bird watching was a primary navigation tool or a complementary habit layered atop more reliable signs like stars or swells. But from your quiet canoe seat, watching these birds slice through the sky with calm intent, it's hard to believe they weren't essential allies. After all, in a world with no GPS, sometimes you simply need to trust the quiet confidence of a noddy on a mission. You listen to the low hum of conversation among the crew,
One older navigator quietly tells the tale of a time they followed a lone seabird for 3 days across an eerily calm ocean. Just when some thought the bird had no idea where it was going, an island suddenly appeared, a gentle green mirage rising from the waves. Laughter follows, not rowdy but fond, as though the ocean had played a small trick with a happy ending. In the evenings, birds also guided behavior. You hear a soft debate whether a circling flight meant the bird was still fishing or whether it had just finished and was returning to its nest. These weren't idle observations, they shaped course corrections, subtle decisions about speed and bearing. Every tiny clue mattered. Some voyagers even carried captured birds in woven baskets. At strategic moments, perhaps when lost in cloud cover or when other clues failed, they'd release a bird, watching intently to see which direction it flew. If it soared upward and curved back toward the canoe, it meant no land was nearby. But if it disappeared on a purposeful trajectory, land likely lay ahead. It's a surprisingly gentle technique, releasing a bird and watching it guide your way. Not through force, but through quiet understanding. There's something humbling about this. While other ancient cultures carved maps onto stone or inked scrolls with sprawling coastlines, Polynesians read the living signs of nature. The birds, the breeze, the swell, each a chapter in a living atlas written without ink. As the day passes, you notice more birds. Some dive playfully into the sea, others rest on the canoe's outrigger, unbothered by human presence. One young sailor quietly scatters bits of coconut husk to coax them closer, smiling at their boldness. You ask whether that helps with navigation. He shrugs, laughing softly. Maybe not, but they make good company. And they do. In a vast ocean of solitude, these birds are like fellow travelers, silent, tireless, purposeful. Their presence brings comfort, their patterns offer guidance, and their movements remind you that even in this vast, quiet world, you're never truly alone. As twilight nears and flocks begin returning to their unseen roosts, the sky becomes dotted with wings like slow-moving stars. And once again, the Polynesian navigator leans forward, quietly adjusting course, not with fanfare or shouting, but with the serene certainty of one who understands that sometimes the best way to find your way home is to follow someone who has already headed there.
As night falls again over the calm ocean, your canoe gently rocking beneath a blanket of stars, you begin to notice something else. Not the sky, not the birds, not even the swells, but the mood of the crew. There's a hush, a quiet reverence. Someone begins a soft chant. Another lights a small bundle of dried herbs, letting fragrant smoke drift upward into the night. You've stepped into the sacred, sleepy world of Polynesian voyaging rituals, a calm intersection between navigation and spirit. Unlike modern travel, which prizes speed, schedule, and efficiency, Polynesian voyages blended the physical journey with deep spiritual meaning. Every crossing, no matter how mundane, was also a dialogue with the gods, the ancestors, and the sea itself. To venture across the ocean wasn't just a test of skill, it was an act of trust, humility, and connection. Before any major voyage, a blessing was performed. Elders and priests, often respected navigators themselves, would chant prayers, offer symbolic gifts to the sea, and invoke ancestral spirits for protection. These weren't loud, dramatic ceremonies. They were serene, measured, and deeply rooted in quiet belief. Even now, you can almost hear one such chant riding on the soft night wind, its words cradled by the waves. Historians still argue whether these rituals were primarily for morale social cohesion, or genuine spiritual faith. Likely it was all three, but from your sleepy vantage point on this canoe, nestled between woven mats and gently slumbering crewmates, you feel it, this sense that someone or something is watching over the journey. One fringe but fascinating tidbit: some navigators were said to enter trance like states before departing, meditating under the stars to speak with ancestors or glimpse signs of the voyage ahead. Whether visionary insight or deeply rooted intuition, these moments were treasured, respected, and sometimes whispered about in cautious tones, never mocked, always honored. Offerings were also made at sea. You watch quietly as one crew member tosses a few strands of pandanus and a morsel of taro into the ocean. It's not superstition, it's etiquette. A respectful nod to Tangaroa, god of the sea, asking for safe passage. There's no expectation of return, only the calm reassurance that respect has been shown. On longer voyages, rituals were woven gently into daily routine. A morning chant to thank the rising sun, a soft murmur before nightfall asking for clear skies. Even the cooking of food followed certain customs. First portions set aside for the spirits, shared silence during meals, or soft songs sung during preparation. Every act, no matter how small, was done with a gentle awareness of its place in a much larger journey. One crewmate, seeing your curiosity, smiles and explains that the canoe itself is seen as a living being. It's not just wood and fiber. It has a name, a spirit, a temperament. If treated well, it will carry you safely. If neglected or insulted, well, let's just say the ocean remembers. Another sleepy chuckle follows. Even the stars are treated with reverence. Specific ones were associated with deities or ancestral spirits. As you gaze up at Sirius, you learn it's known as Taku Ua, a guiding light believed to be the watchful eye of a guardian, not a scientific marker, but a comforting presence. The crew shares stories in whispers of voyages where a sudden rainbow appeared just as the canoe was lost in fog, or a pod of dolphins circled them after a prayer as if answering. These stories, passed from generation to generation, aren't told to impress. They're shared to soothe, to bond, and to remind each other that the sea isn't just water, it's memory, it's spirit, it's softly sacred. You begin to understand that for Polynesian navigators, the act of sailing wasn't a race or a conquest. It was a ritual in motion. Each paddle stroke, each adjustment of the sail, even the decision to rest or sing or sit in silence, all were pieces of a larger, unseen pattern. And so, under the vast stillness of the night sky, with only the scent of herbs and the hum of chants as your lullaby, you slip into dreams, not of destinations, but of connections, between ocean and spirit, between traveler and guide, between present and the countless, quiet generations who have made this same sacred crossing before. Dawn arrives with a warm breeze and the soft creaking of ropes. Your canoe gently glides over the glassy surface of the Pacific, and you realize something beautiful. This journey isn't one endless stretch of water. It's a chain of stepping stones, islands scattered across the vastness, quietly waiting. Welcome to the calm brilliance of Polynesian island hopping. To modern minds, it sounds improbable. Setting out across thousands of kilometers of ocean in search of tiny specks of land. But the Polynesians didn't stumble upon these places. They found them intentionally, patiently, one by one, using a sophisticated mental map and an understanding of the ocean that defies most GPS-enabled expectations. The strategy was simple yet ingenious. Don't aim for the the center of a giant ocean, aim for a known point, then use that as a base for the next. From Samoa to Tonga, to the Cook Islands, to Tahiti and beyond, each voyage served as a calm leap forward. You sit now at the stern of the canoe, watching as the next island gently rises out of the mist, like a soft secret being revealed by the sea. Each island held not just land and resources, but knowledge. A crew might stop for rest, yes, but also to gather oral directions, celestial pointers, and updates on wind patterns. These weren't rushed pit stops. They were opportunities to recalibrate. Polynesian navigators didn't merely sail from A to B. They listened, observed, and adjusted, slowly stitching together the Pacific like a vast floating quilt. Historians still argue whether this method began with accidental drift voyages or was always a deliberate pattern of expansion, but the evidence increasingly supports the latter. Navigators marked distances between islands in terms of days, swell patterns, and star positions, creating fluid but reliable mental atlases passed down through song and story. One quirky tradition: some navigators were said to remember routes based on the flavor of the seawater near certain islands, slightly sweeter near freshwater outflows, brinier near coral reefs, a palette-based memory map. Now that's an acquired taste. And the canoes, each one carefully constructed for range and flexibility. Outriggers provided balance, double hulls allowed for speed and storage. Sails were adjustable for shifts in wind. These vessels weren't makeshift rafts. They were long-range voyaging machines engineered with quiet brilliance. You reach one such island, low-lying, dotted with palms, the sand warm and fine beneath your bare feet. The crew unloads supplies calmly. A small group sets off inland to greet the locals. There's no dramatic clash of civilizations, just a soft exchange of goods, songs, and stories. The navigators confer, heads close, voices low, swapping recent observations. The moon rose 2 hours earlier than usual, one says. The northern swell has cooled, notes another. Island hopping wasn't just practical, it was poetic. Each new island brought not just direction, but renewed connection. Some served as spiritual sites, others as celestial markers, some simply as rest stops for weary travelers. The Pacific became less a void and more a dotted path of belonging. As the canoe sets off again, you glance back at the island, now receding into haze. One sailor waves, the gesture casual but meaningful. It's not goodbye, just a gentle, see you again, because in this culture, you return. Roots are never forgotten, names are never erased, land isn't conquered, it's befriended. The sails rise again, catching the morning breeze. Your crew falls into rhythm, no shouting, no rushing, just soft coordination. A navigator dips a hand into the sea. Another adjusts the tiller ever so slightly. You pass through this island-hopping world as if walking a quiet path between the stars. The ocean beneath you, no longer a mystery, but a companion gently revealing its secrets. And as the sun climbs higher, the next distant silhouette appears, just barely a blur on the horizon. Another island, another whispered stop, another step in a journey that stretches across time, tide, and trust.
As the sky deepens into twilight and the canoe rocks gently beneath a lavender-tinged sky, your mind turns from stars and birds to something even more subtle. Signs hidden in plain sight. The Polynesians, in their quiet genius, didn't just watch the heavens. They observed everything. Every shift of cloud, every drift of seaweed, every scent in the wind held meaning. Welcome to the art of reading nature's softest whispers. You inhale slowly. The breeze smells faintly earthy, not salty, earthy. Your Polynesian navigator nods knowingly. That scent, it means land is near. Even if it's still over the horizon, the wind has already introduced it. Islanders knew the smell of distant rainforests, of volcanic soil, of flowering vegetation. Some could detect these signs days in advance. A drifting branch bobs alongside the canoe. A navigator scoops it up, examines its bark, and murmurs the name of an island. It's not magic, it's memory. They know which trees grow where and which currents carry what. These floating breadcrumbs were quietly cataloged in minds trained to remember. Historians still argue how much of this natural sign reading was intentional skill versus accumulated folklore. But one thing's certain, it worked. Islanders across thousands of miles reported near identical techniques for interpreting floating debris, bird flocks, and cloud shapes. The consistency hints at deep shared knowledge passed calmly across generations. Clouds, too, were signposts, not just for weather, but for land. Look up. That flat-bottomed cumulus cloud, low and dense, it's probably parked above an island. Land warms the air differently than open sea, and those subtle differences shape the clouds. You might mistake it for a passing puff, but your navigator doesn't. He gently adjusts the sail. One fringe tidbit. Some navigators swore by bioluminescence. At night, if the water glowed a certain way, or if particular patterns of plankton sparkled around the hull, they'd take it as a directional cue. Hard to prove, even harder to disprove, but just spooky enough to make you believe a little. The color of the water, the behavior of fish, even the patterns of swell reflection near unseen reefs, all these were signs. You watch in quiet awe as a sailor drops a stone tied to twine into the ocean. It sinks, pauses, then brushes something. He reels it up. Coral. Not just any coral, a type that grows near island shelves. He grins. Close. At dusk, the wind shifts. You feel the air grow cooler, damper. A navigator licks his finger, yes, really, and holds it aloft. His eyes close briefly. He hums. A soft change in wind temperature confirms his hunch. An island must be nearby. Not because of a radar ping or satellite update, but because he tasted it in the breeze. And the stars, they're still there, always there. But tonight, you realize something new. They're not alone in guiding the journey. They're part of a chorus, birds, clouds, scents, debris, even the mood of the sea, all singing softly in harmony, telling the story of where you are and where you're going. One crew member begins a soft chant about a legendary voyage. It's rhythmic, sleepy, full of imagery about turtles and fireflies and mountains that float. But hidden in that lullaby is real data. Landmarks, currents, seasonal clues. You smile, realizing Polynesian knowledge was never just taught, it was sung, shared, and lived. As the stars strengthen above and the canoe sails quietly on, you grow comforted by how nothing escapes notice. There's no hierarchy of information. Everything matters. Everything contributes. And the ocean isn't a challenge to be conquered. It's a language to be understood. And in that stillness, you feel it too. Not just the signs of nature, but your own slow awakening to the patterns around you, as if the ocean, patient and vast, has been gently waiting for you to start noticing all along.
Air as the crew begins its quiet preparations for another day of voyaging. You stretch, still half dreaming, and glance up at the sky. Soft clouds cling to the horizon while the sun peeks hesitantly over the ocean's edge, and already your navigator is watching, not with urgency, but with the calm patience of someone reading a favorite story. Today, you'll learn the ancient, sleepy science of Polynesian weather wisdom. Weather isn't merely background noise for these voyagers, it's the rhythm, the atmosphere, the pulse of every journey. Reading the skies and seas wasn't optional, it was survival. And perhaps more impressively, it was subtle. Polynesian navigators didn't forecast with barometers or satellite images. They used color, smell, air pressure on the skin, and the texture of the clouds. Quiet tools for careful readers. You look east, the clouds are long and streaky, almost like brushed feathers. The navigator notes this and mutters something soft. High winds in 2 days. You blink. 2 days? How could he possibly know that? He chuckles, offering no explanation, just a knowing smile. Historians still argue whether such predictions were just guesswork, refined by repetition, or whether genuine meteorological mastery was at play. You suspect the latter. Another sailor, barefoot on the deck, stares at the waves. He crouches presses his palm gently to the canoe's planks, as if feeling the breath of the ocean itself. He whispers about a distant storm still hundreds of miles away. No thunderclouds, no lightning, just a subtle shift in swell rhythm and air moisture. It's quiet forecasting at its finest. In the distance, the clouds begin to stack, tall and thick like sleeping volcanoes, towering cumulonimbus. You've seen these in textbooks, but out here, their shape, movement, and color mean so much more. The navigator shifts slightly, adjusting the rigging. Not panicked, just respectful. A silent nod to the sky's warning. One delightfully quirky tradition. Some crews would observe the behavior of jellyfish near the surface. Certain jellyfish species, when floating higher than usual or glowing more brightly, were believed to predict rain or wind shifts. It's part myth, part marine biology, and entirely charming. Smell plays a role too. A sudden whiff of ozone or an earthy tinge in the wind sends crew members glancing upward. Even the smell of the seaweed changes, more pungent before rainfall, more metallic before a storm. These tiny notes create a symphony only the well-trained can hear. You overhear a tale of a navigator who once called off an entire voyage because the clouds moved like the feet of a restless ghost. The crew obeyed. The storm arrived 2 days later. No drama, no I told you so. Just a quiet understanding that nature whispers before it shouts. Clouds shifting color at sunset, that's not just pretty, it's meaningful. Pale gold signals calm weather. Blood orange, trouble ahead. A pinkish hue, especially when coupled with silence from the birds, has its own soft alarm, and the crew doesn't panic. They simply respond, gently trimming sails or choosing a more protected heading. Even the nighttime sky tells weather stories. If the stars flicker more than usual, it may indicate turbulence in the upper atmosphere. If the air feels unusually warm after dusk, a humid, low-pressure system could be sliding in. You can almost hear the navigator's thoughts as he reads these celestial cues, making tiny adjustments no one else notices. And yet, despite all this detailed awareness, there's humility. You hear one elder admit that sometimes the sea does what it wants. We listen, he says, but we don't control. It's not about conquering nature. It's about learning her moods, gently adapting, and showing quiet deference. You settle into your spot on the deck, the wood warm beneath you. The clouds shift again. A breeze picks up. No one shouts, no sails flap wildly. Instead, small changes ripple through the crew, hands moving with soft certainty, ropes pulled with ease. The canoe becomes a living thing, adjusting itself like a sleepy creature turning over in bed. As the day unfolds, you begin to sense it too, that a subtle anticipation, the way weather speaks in hints and half smiles. It doesn't scream, it suggests, and for those with the patience to listen, like the Polynesian navigators, it reveals just enough to keep you safe, guided, and always in harmony with the sky. Afternoon sun glints off the waves, and the crew is in good spirits. Laughter rises gently above the rhythm of paddles. Someone cracks open a fresh coconut and hands you a piece. Cool, sweet, unexpectedly comforting, but this innocent tropical treat carries a strange mystery with it, one that has quietly puzzled navigators and scholars alike. The coconut conundrum. Coconuts are everywhere in Polynesia, on beaches, bobbing in the surf, woven into meals, sails, and even stories. But here's the curious bit. They seem to have spread farther and wider than any single canoe journey can explain. How did these hardy fruits wind up on so many scattered islands, even ones where no human settlements yet existed? As your navigator leans back, sipping from a cracked shell, he offers a simple answer: the ocean. Coconuts float, and they float well. Buoyant, salt-resistant, and equipped with built-in survival kits, fibers, food, and future trees, they make the perfect castaways. For thousands of years, they've drifted quietly across the Pacific, hitching rides on currents and swells, sometimes landing softly on empty shores and planting themselves before any human ever arrived. Historians still argue whether humans intentionally carried coconuts across islands or whether they largely arrived by natural drift. The debate is friendly but persistent. Did the coconuts pave the way for Polynesian expansion? Or did the navigators simply follow their trail, finding the telltale coconut as evidence that land lay ahead? One quirky detail: navigators often took note of the size and color of coconuts found on new islands. Some believed a certain shapes floated better or traveled farther. Entire debates played out over campfires about whether the stubby yellow ones were better swimmers than the long green ones. These weren't idle conversations, they hinted at deeper questions about routes, timing, and sea currents. You watch as a few coconuts lazily bump against the hull of the canoe. A young crew member scoops one up, shakes it, and nods approvingly. Not because he's thirsty, but because he sees it as a kind of signpost. These came from the west, he murmurs. How does he know? The navigator explains. Based on the tide, the current, and the freshness of the husk, he can guess their origin. It's not science in the lab sense, it's science of the sea, lived and whispered. Coconuts also featured in rituals. Before launching a voyage, offerings of coconut water might be poured into the sea. During navigation lessons, elders used halves of the shell to model island positions, winds, and stars. Sometimes young apprentices trained their sense of direction by watching how a floating coconut moved over time, learning current flow the slow and quiet way. And of course, coconuts sustained life. On long voyages, they were hydration, food, and fiber all in one. But even that practicality came with stories. You hear one old tale about a crew who ran out of water and survived 5 extra days thanks to a hidden stash of coconuts buried under ropes, forgotten, then rediscovered in a moment of near desperation. The punchline? They toasted the moment with coconut milk, then argued for hours over who actually remembered hiding them. Even today, some islands hold quiet legends about coconuts arriving on beaches before humans ever settled there, like nature leaving gentle invitations. And for Polynesian navigators, these floating orbs were more than fruit. They were familiar, friendly, and full of clues, In a sea without signposts, they offered a rare kind of reassurance. You lean back, half dozing now, the gentle sway of the canoe lulling you into calm. The empty coconut shell rolls gently across the deck and settles beside you. It's not just debris. It's a quiet reminder of nature's role in guiding human journeys. And as the canoe presses onward toward whatever land or horizon lies ahead, you can't help but smile at the thought, sometimes all it takes to find your way across the vastest ocean is to follow a fruit. As twilight stretches across the horizon once more, a quiet hush settles over the canoe. The ocean is calm, the sails slackening gently as the wind fades into a warm evening sigh. It's during this stillness that your navigator does something curious. He begins to speak, not in commands, but in rhythm, like a low chant drifting over the waves. Tonight, you enter the quiet world of oral navigation, the whispering legacy passed from one generation to the next. You might think serious knowledge comes written down in books, maps, or high-tech devices, but for Polynesian navigators, the map was memorized, sung, and told. It lived in the mind, in the heart, and in the body. Imagine growing up hearing tales every night that were secretly navigation lessons, epics of voyages that doubled as mnemonic devices, embedding route, reef, and risk into story. The chant your navigator sings tonight, it's not just poetry, it's a star path, a wayfinding tool encoded in verse. Each stanza links to a star, a direction, a crossing. He hums softly, then pauses, explaining how a phrase about fire beneath the turtle's eye refers to a constellation and a current you'll meet just before reaching Samoa. You nod, pretending you understand. He smiles. You'll get it, he says. It just takes a few hundred nights. Historians still argue how consistent these oral traditions were across different islands. Some claim they were rigid and formal. Others believe they were fluid, adapting with each storyteller. What's clear is that the songs, chants, and stories were as crucial as any compass, just sung into memory rather than etched into parchment. A quirky detail? Some families developed their own variations on the navigation chants, passing down house versions of certain star paths. Think of it like a recipe handed down with a secret pinch of something only grandma knew. These personalized chants became lineage markers, respected and treasured. A navigator's identity was often tied to his unique oral map. Tonight, as the chant continues, a young apprentice joins in. His voice cracks slightly on a tricky verse, drawing a few grins, but no one mocks him. This is learning in its softest form, by rhythm, repetition, and shared breath. The canoe becomes a classroom, the ocean the chalkboard, and the stars the curriculum. You notice now how the stories often repeat. A hero who sails toward the moon, an island made of fish bones, a wind that smells like breadfruit. These may sound whimsical, but each one encodes real directional data. Where certain stars rise, what ones follow them, what signs to expect when you're near land. The navigator explains how learning these chants isn't just memorizing, it's embodying. You don't just know where the star rises, you feel it. You don't just recite the path, you sail it in your mind again and again until your bones remember. Some oral traditions even included lullabies, songs mothers sang to babies that subtly introduced star names, directions, and nature signs. Navigation began in infancy, not with instruction but with immersion, the softest form of schooling. As night deepens, more voices join the chant. The tone grows, rounder, slower, a gentle wave of memory rippling through the air. You feel it washing over you, not information, but presence. These aren't just words, they're history, geography, lineage, and lullaby. No books will ever hold these songs exactly. They shift with time, with teller, with tide, and that's part of their magic. Like the ocean itself, they are alive, breathing, flowing, always moving, always returning. The chant draws to a close. The canoe is silent again, save for the rhythmic sigh of water against the hull. You close your eyes, the verses, still humming quietly in your mind, like stars slowly blinking into place. And as you drift to sleep under the velvet sky, you realize, in a world before maps, sometimes the surest way to remember where you're going is to sing it.
Morning light spills across the ocean in long gold ribbons, and the air feels heavier than usual, expectant, maybe even reverent. Your canoe glides forward, the crew quiet but alert. The navigator's eyes scan the horizon, and then, barely a breath later, he points. There, far off in the haze, a faint blue shape rises like a dream. You've arrived at Aotearoa, what we now call New Zealand. Reaching this southern outpost of Polynesian migration was no accident. It was a monumental journey, 2,500 kilometers of open sea from the tropical zones of central Polynesia to the cooler, more rugged isles far below. And yet, the early Polynesians did it deliberately, multiple times, quietly defying everything modern logic says about ancient navigation. You look toward the land. Steep cliffs, lush forests, mountains that look like sleeping giants beneath a rising mist. It's colder here, noticeably so. The winds are brisk, the currents stronger, but the signs were still there. The stars, the birds, the swell, all whispering that something massive lay just beyond. Historians still argue whether Polynesians first settled Aotearoa by accident, blown off course, or whether it was a planned exploration. Archaeological evidence now leans toward intent. Sizable, well-provisioned canoes arriving in waves, not just one lucky escape. But out here, on the ocean, it's the quiet confidence of your navigator that convinces you. This wasn't guesswork, this was memory. You hear a soft chant begin, a traveling song passed down from those early voyages. It mentions the Southern Cross, a constellation unfamiliar in earlier journeys but now essential. The navigator had adapted, learning a new sky. The chant folds in new cues, different winds, different birds, even the taste of the sea here, richer and colder. One fascinating quirk, some Polynesian navigators began naming new stars, specifically seen only from these southern latitudes. They incorporated them into their oral maps, adjusting old verses with new refrains. It's as if the universe itself expanded to accommodate this bold step south. You land briefly. The island feels ancient and unfamiliar. Towering trees, unlike the palms of the tropics, songs of birds you've never heard before. But the crew is unafraid. They step ashore with calm reverence, gathering fresh water and observing new currents, mapping the coastline with their eyes and feet, not pencils and parchment. Back on the canoe, a story is told, softly, slowly, of Kupe, the legendary voyager credited with discovering Aotearoa. Some say he chased a giant octopus across the sea. Others say he followed the flight of a long-tailed bird. No one agrees on the details, but all agree on the tone. Awe, pride, and respect for a journey that tested the edge of the known world. The canoe shifts with the tide as you prepare to leave. One sailor presses his palm gently to the water, saying nothing. It's a small gesture of gratitude, perhaps, or perhaps a message. The sea brought them here, after all, and it will carry them onward. You realize now that Aotearoa wasn't just a destination, it was a turning point, the farthest reach of a seafaring legacy that spanned half the globe, and yet not an ending, because true navigation never ends, it simply curves. As the cliffs of New Zealand recede into the morning mist, you take one last look back. You imagine the first canoes arriving, creaking, salt-streaked, full of hope and starlight. They didn't plant flags, they planted stories, and those stories, quiet and rhythmic, still echo on the waves, still guide the canoe forward.
The breeze is warmer now, the sky a soft canvas of blues and cream, and there's a hum of excitement across the canoe. Today's destination isn't hidden. It rises boldly from the sea, wrapped in clouds and crowned in green. You're sailing toward Hawaii, the lush volcanic islands that would become a thriving center of Polynesian life and legacy. The crew points with reverent gestures. Even from this distance, you sense it. Hawaii feels different, vast, elevated, cloaked in mist. You catch the scent of rain on lava rock, of flowering ginger and salt-kissed soil. The approach is slower, ceremonial almost, as if the canoe is bowing to the land before stepping ashore. Historians still debate exactly when the first Polynesians arrived here, but consensus has grown around the 9th or 10th century. What's remarkable is not just that they found Hawaii, but that they returned. Again and again. The distance from other Polynesian hubs is immense, nearly 4,000 kilometers in some directions, but the navigators mapped these paths with confidence, guided by sky, sea, and memory. As you draw closer, a soft chant begins again. This one older, more rhythmic. It praises the ocean's patience and the paddler's resolve. You learn that this chant has roots in the earliest voyages to Hawaii, updated over generations to reflect shifting skies and winds. Every star in it feels like a character. Every verse a course correction. One odd but charming detail some navigators reportedly knew they were close to Hawaii when they spotted a specific seabird with an unusually loud cry. Legend says the bird was once human, cursed to fly endlessly between the islands, guiding only the worthy. Whether fact or fable, its call still prompts a pause among the crew. As the canoe makes a landfall, the landscape unfolds like a dream. Steep cliffs plunge into turquoise bays, waterfalls spill down from cloud-wreathed mountains. Bananas, taro, and sweet potatoes thrive in the volcanic soil. It's paradise, but it's also work. The crew sets about carefully observing the terrain, testing the waters, checking familiar currents against this new setting. Polynesian navigators didn't just travel to new lands, they adapted. Hawaii demanded new knowledge, stronger canoes to tackle bigger surf, updated chants to reflect new starscapes, adjusted rituals to harmonize with local gods and landscapes. The voyaging culture didn't stop here, it evolved. You hear a quiet story of Pele, the volcano goddess, and her sister Hiyaka, who crossed the islands to plant healing herbs. The myth is rich, dramatic, and poetic, but behind it lies geography, landmarks, and sacred sites. Navigation wasn't just about direction, it was about connection. Back aboard the canoe, the crew prepares to head out again. Not because Hawaii isn't home, but because voyaging is in their bones. You watch as they adjust sails, scan the skies, and trace water currents, with fingers dipped gently into the surf. It's second nature now, this conversation with the ocean. The navigator points out a new star path on the horizon. A younger sailor nods slowly. murmuring part of a chant under his breath. It's how they pass the torch, not in lectures or maps, but in murmurs, in movement, in quiet demonstration. Before you go, one sailor plants a breadfruit sapling near the shore. It's a subtle promise. This land will be remembered, cared for, returned to, and it will remember them too. As the canoe slips away from the bay, the towering peaks of Hawaii disappear slowly behind you, fading into mist. But the feeling remains that this journey, like so many others, wasn't about discovery in the Western sense. It was about returning, remembering, and expanding the circle of known islands that whisper their presence through wind and wave. You awaken to laughter, a low, easy sound carried on the breeze. The canoe is docked beside another island now, not as lush as Hawaii, but familiar. A small crowd has gathered near the shoreline, and what happens next isn't dramatic or ceremonial. It's something far simpler. An exchange, a smile, a gift, a story. Welcome to the quiet economy of ancient Polynesian trade. In the Western imagination, trade is often loud. Markets bustling, coins clinking, merchants shouting. But here, it's almost musical. A basket of feathers for a carved tool, a length of tapa cloth for dried fish, hands outstretched not in greed, but in mutual recognition. You sense it immediately. Trade for Polynesians was about relationship as much as resources. The navigator leads you ashore, where he's greeted not as a stranger, but as a cousin. The people know each other, despite being separated by hundreds of kilometers of open ocean. That's because these journeys were regular, intentional, and often familial. Canoes didn't just carry goods, they carried kin. Historians still debate the scale and frequency of this trade network. Some believe it was limited and irregular, while others argue it formed one of the most expansive maritime trade webs in pre-modern history. But no matter the scale, the effect is clear. Knowledge, culture, and materials moved constantly, slowly stitching the Pacific together. One delightfully fringed tidbit: archaeologists have found basalt adzes, stone tools used for canoe building, on islands thousands of miles from where the rock was quarried. These weren't accidental finds. They were prized and passed on like heirlooms. A tool might have 5 or 6 owners before finding its final home. As the sun climbs higher, you notice how each island specializes. This one has better timber. That one has unique shells. Another is famed for its healing herbs. The navigators know this, cataloging it in their mental maps, adding layers, not just of geography, but of value. You sit beside a group exchanging chants. It sounds like music, but it's actually news. Stories from distant islands. Who married whom? Which chief passed away? Which crops thrived this season? No postal service, no parchment, just memory, melody, and trust. Children play nearby, chasing each other with bundles of fragrant herbs. One pauses to show you a pendant carved from bone given by a visitor 2 seasons ago. She doesn't know the exact island it came from, but she knows the story. And in this world, story is everything. Some goods are sacred, others are everyday, but all are shared with calm ceremony. A sailor gives a small bag of salt to an elder, who in turn offers a carefully wrapped piece of bark cloth. There's no haggling, no tallying, just a quiet nod. It's not about balance, it's about reciprocity, trust, and long memory. Back on the canoe, the deck fills slowly with gifts, gourds, root vegetables, feathered capes, and bundles of medicinal leaves. Each one packed carefully, not just for preservation, but with respect. These aren't just items, they're threads. Threads in a vast, calm tapestry stretching across sea and time. The sails lift again. The canoe departs. You watch the island recede, not with sadness, but with the warmth of connection. Another strand in the web, another gentle link or reinforced. As you settle into your spot on the deck, one of the younger crew members leans in and says, with a smile, they'll be expecting us again next season. It's not a farewell, it's a promise. And you understand now, trade wasn't about expansion. It was about continuity, reconnection, remembering that no matter how wide the ocean stretched, the people of these islands were never truly apart. The ocean stretches out, calm but endless, and your crew sails onward with the ease of familiarity. Yet now and then a hushed conversation rises from the stern, a quiet question, a softly spoken name, not of an island seen, but of one remembered, one no longer found. You've entered the domain of the forgotten islands. Polynesian lore is full of places whispered about but seldom located, floating islands that vanish, atolls swallowed by the sea, names carried only in song. These islands might have once been real, might have shifted beneath the waves, or perhaps were always more spiritual than geographical, but they mattered, and they still do. Historians still argue whether these lost islands were factual locations erased by rising sea levels, volcanic eruptions, or simple cartographic error, or were they metaphorical, symbolic waypoints in a navigator's mental map. The debate persists quietly, just like the stories. One such place is Hawaii, a name that floats across the Pacific. Some say it was the Polynesian homeland. Others call it a spiritual origin. Every island seems to claim it as the place we came from, but none agree on where it lies. You hear the name spoken with reverence, sometimes laughter. It's not about location, it's about belonging. A fringe but fascinating tidbit: on certain islands, children are still taught to point in the direction of lost islands during ceremonial songs, as though their presence lingers just beyond the horizon. It's an act of memory, not of map making. The canoe sails past one such area now, open sea where, according to old chants, there should be land. The navigator marks it with a soft note in his mind, not to adjust course, but to honor the story. This is where Nukumotu once stood, he says, pointing at the blank horizon. Before the sea took her back. You feel it, a strange sort of nostalgia for something you've never seen. The absence is palpable, as if the ocean itself holds a memory too. The crew shares tales, some funny, some eerie. One sailor insists his grandfather once landed on a now vanished island with glowing stones. Another swears he saw an island appear, then disappear in a fog bank. You expect skepticism. You hear none, because belief here is not about proof. It's about continuity. Stories are not discarded just because the landscape has changed. They're carried, cherished, recited softly to keep them afloat. Some believe these tales serve another purpose: to warn, to guide, to teach humility. Lost islands become metaphors for listening closely, for not rushing, for never assuming you know everything about the sea. As night falls, the chants resume. This time, they include names of islands no longer on any modern chart. You realize these verses are lifeboats for fading memories, a gentle defiance of forgetfulness. And perhaps, just perhaps, some of these islands were real. Coral that subsided, volcanoes that slumbered back beneath the waves, shorelines altered by time and tide. But to the Polynesians, whether they still existed physically was only part of the story. The real truth lay in remembrance. You lie back on the deck, watching the stars. Somewhere in this vastness, Hawaii still exists. Maybe not on a GPS, but in chant, in gesture, in silence. And as long as someone sings its name, it will never truly be lost. The canoe glides through the water, the sails trimmed just so, and the sky begins to shift, soft peach fading into muted gray. You sense something different in the air, not the arrival of a storm or the approach of land, but something quieter, more internal. It's the end of the voyage, or perhaps just the return. Tonight you join the final leg of a journey, a homecoming. Your navigator stands a little taller now, gaze fixed not on the stars, but on the memory of a coastline he knows well. The crew moves with quiet purpose. No celebration, no clamor, just a steady rhythm of paddles and the occasional whispered direction. The mood is reflective, the sea a mirror. Historians still wonder how often ancient voyages returned versus ending in permanent migration. But for the Polynesians, the concept of home wasn't fixed. An island wasn't just a spot on the map, it was a place woven into story, connection, and ancestry. You could leave, yes, but home was carried with you in chant and gesture in every pulse of the canoe. The young apprentices are quieter tonight. One sharpens a paddle, another adjusts a bundle of woven mats. There's a sense of ritual in their movements. A small bundle of herbs is burned near the bow, not to purify, but to thank. The sea has been kind. You ask your navigator what changes when you return. He smiles. Nothing. Everything. It's one of those cryptic, frustratingly poetic answers you've come to expect from him. But now you understand it better. A fringe story? Some say navigators could sense when they were close to home, not by sight, but by smell. The faintest hint of familiar blossoms carried on a breeze that no one else noticed. Some claim they could hear the rhythm of local waves from miles away. Home wasn't just seen, it was felt. The canoe drifts closer. Shapes emerge from the haze. Trees you recognize, the curve of a beach you've imagined. A small figure waves from the shore. Then two, then many. The welcome is not boisterous, it's reverent. As if your return fulfills a promise made to the sea, the stars, and every chant sung along the way. The crew lands without ceremony. A few hugs, a few jokes about who got seasick most often. Supplies are unloaded, names are exchanged. But you notice something. No one seems to rush. Time once again has slowed. And now the wind down begins. The sails have been folded, the paddles stored. The stars blink quietly above as the fire on shore flickers low. You sit on the warm sand, listening to the night, the ocean gently sighing against the beach, the murmur of voices sharing one last story. The scent of the voyage still clings to you. Salt, wood smoke, sun. You breathe it in deeply, letting it settle into memory. There's no need to retell the journey now. You felt it, heard it, rocked with it. It's become part of you. The navigator joins you one last time. He doesn't speak. He simply places a shell in your hand, smooth, worn, ordinary. But in its curves, you recognize everything. The rhythm of the waves, the pulse of paddles, the hush of sails catching wind. You close your eyes. The voices around you soften. The fire cracks lower. And the ocean, vast and timeless, hums a lullaby beneath the stars.